Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report, and we talked in the last segments with Clay about some of the new models of what disease is. Dis-ease actually is a good term because dis means out of balance and ease means out of physiological balance. The problem is that medicine, as has developed over the number of centuries, has looked at signs and symptoms, and your doctor basically has a very narrow range of testing, both imaging tests and blood tests. Either can be misinterpreted or overinterpreted. So a lot of people cut because they see an abnormal MRI scan of your lumbar spine, or if they see a bone density, they immediately lurch for their bisphosphonate drugs, which are extremely toxic to the cells that lay down collagen 29 type for your bones, which is 42% of your dry weight. And they kill the osteoblasts. Your bones get more dense, but they're also more brittle and not as strong. What we provide at Nutrimedical is a level of, if you want to call it, functional medical care that's far beyond what your primary care doctor or specialist can provide. And I can upgrade them very quickly. They don't need to go to a special course. You just need to call me case by case, and I will tell them how to be a better doctor. I'll give them advanced imaging tests, functional medicine tests, and my favorite are the QRMA and the Bioplasm Expert and Pro, which are available now. And if they want a very advanced clinical machine, the Bioplasm Clinical. And they look at the bioplasmatic body because before you actually have physiological changes or pathology, your bioplasmatic body is out of balance, meaning abnormal mineral content, abnormal electrical circuits in the body, we call frequency harmonic circuits. And those abnormal imbalances in the bioplasmatic body lead to pathology that eventually develops organ damage, signs and symptoms, whether it's diabetic retinopathy, heart disease, liver degeneration, osteoporosis, etc. And in fact, understanding the nature of what disease is actually the key to actually stopping aging, because 90% of what we call aging is actually disease. Then the rest is acute injuries or infectious disease, which can take you very quickly. So Ryan, when we have our NutriMeds, a lot of people, and I want to kind of continue to castigate people, do not go elsewhere for your NutriMeds other than Nutrimedical. Number one, it supports what we do here at Nutrimedical, which is develop and advance the science of functional medicine. And I recently had doctors in Chile who wanted me to help their institute. I'm going to publish a kind of an abbreviated version of my Dr. U book, which we put out last year, which is a very early start of it, but I'm not going to give all my quote trade secrets, but I'm going to tell the basic principles in it. And we're also going to tell people the technologies that you can use, like the QRMA, Bioplasm Expert and Pro, and functional medicine testing. And when you do these and you integrate your practice, whether you're a pediatrician, internist, or a surgeon, you're going to be a better doctor. Now, you don't need to go back to school for years to learn these principles. I can teach them to somebody, one case at a time in a matter of a couple of hours. And that's the way to learn, I think, is case by case. When you learn case by case, you integrate it into your practice, and it changes the kind of doctor you are. It also makes you a problem solver rather than just a technician. So, Ryan, what we look at functional medicine is actually I call living pathology. And the biopathology happens as we call biocircuits or bioplasmatic circuits of the bioplasmatic body long before you actually have physical pathology you can identify in a biopsy or an immunological test, etc. But NutriMeds actually addresses that, and that's what's kind of neat about it, is NutriMeds will actually fix the bioplasmatic body. Because they're, number one, the highest forms of bioavailability. They're in their final metabolic stage. They're activated, and they're custom designed to be the most powerful nutraceuticals on the planet, which, of course, directly violates the Codex Alimentarius, developed food rules by the drug companies to stymie the advance of what I call nutraceutical functional medicine, which, to be honest with you, is really a bad business model, because if the pharmaceutical businesses were smart, they'd just start taking over nutraceutical companies and then call them nutripharmaceuticals, because they'd certify by every batch that they had high-pressure chromatography that the biomolecules were at the right strain from the right part of the plant, and they would cause a specific biological function change, and they would certify it in their double-blind placebo-controlled trials. But remember now, the body works as nonlinear systems with more than one factor, so you can't just do a single variable in order to prove that it's working. That's why the bioplasmatic body and functional medicine testing are better. So, let's go back to basic principles. Please, when we give you a protocol, whether it's to reverse your retinopathy in your eyes or your diabetic cardiomyopathy because you have hypertension and you go into heart failure, or you've got plaque in your circle of Willis and you're going to have a stroke, and you've got calcified plaque and arteries in your brain, or you're developing precancerous changes with some of these new cancer tests, or your universal cancer tests, we can reverse all of that with NutriMeds. There really is no health condition, including, as I say, we'll even create solutions. If you send us your gene snips of which genes are going on and which organic acids are out of balance on your organic acid analysis, like the OAT from the Great Plains Lab, or Genova Metametrics or Doctor's Data, I can actually customize a nutraceutical protocol and tell you how to retest to see if we're on track. Because again, remember, like Ronald Reagan before, he had too many jelly beans laced with aspartame. Trust but verify, and I believe we can verify your bioplasmatic body with a QRMA and a Bioplasm Expert Pro and functional medicine testing. So for even those people who are highly skeptical, I can dissuade all of their concerns by proving to them that this is real science. So Ryan, what makes nutraceuticals made by us, Nutrimedical, so superior? What makes the protocols so powerful, including the functional testing, that really anybody's thinking that they can get something better, or they can second guess? And I think I can buy something that sounds like Dr. Deagle on the internet or Vitacost or God knows where. They're, as I say, they're entering, as they say, a fool's paradise, aren't they?
Well, these are, these formulations that you are, have worked on and brought in. They're designed, for a healthcare provider like yourself, a doctor,
right,
to utilize to get the best possible results the patient can get. They're not just there to be, hey, we can put this on the shelf and somebody's just going to buy it and we can make some money off of it. These are there to get the best results possible. And so they're built with that in mind. They're built to address these issues of bioavailability. They're built to address these issues where, people have poor absorption, they have leaky gut, they have compromised phase 1, phase 2 liver function. The list goes on and on. When people, are involved in functional medicine, they certainly understand that A does not just, go to B, goes to C. They understand the spider web-like integrity of the body and how everything is dynamic in the way that it works and resonates with itself. And so these formulations are designed more in that context than anything else out there.
Yeah, the best way to think of the body is a fractal nonlinear hologram. How's that?
It's a highly technical definition for a lot of people. Spiderweb for me works, but I like it.
Yeah, that's what it is, a spiderweb. In other words, basically it means the small is equal to grows into the big, that the body is nonlinear, interconnected, so it's not just A causing B, D, right down to Z, that they're all interactive, and that you need the activated forms, and you need to have the right balance. For example, if you take too much zinc, and your requirements for copper are higher because you're pre-diabetic, and you're binding copper because you have a copper transport mechanism problem, so you're going to end up with copper 2 problems. The answer isn't just to take Kelomax to pull out the abnormal excess bad copper, which you need to take. So if you're diabetic, you need to be taking Kelomax to pull out the bad copper, but you need to take copper, zinc, and our Minerals Plus you'll need extra copper in our Copper Regenemax. So I tell people, you need to measure those. That's where the QRMA is the most useful test. And then you need to actually find out, and it's funny, I had a recent pharmacist say, well, I heard that chromium is bad for diabetics. I said, are you crazy? You have organic transamino acid chromium, and it's going to lower insulin resistance. All the studies show that, for example, our diabetoline, if you give it to the average diabetic, they're either going to go off insulin completely and or drop most of their diabetic meds, and in time, you'll make them non-diabetic. And, of course, we add that to things to take away, I call their angry fat. The angry fat syndrome occurs in diabetics is because of these imbalances. And you use LipoFlush and leptin metabolic, diabetoline, biotin plus, chromium cruciferate, minerals plus. And guess what? Their insulin resistance goes away and their angry fat goes away, and you start making them lose weight because you're giving them LipoFlush and catechins like NutriDefense and Green Tea Select. And these are very powerful. The NutriDefense catechins, the polyphenol, they'll speed up mobilization and getting rid of the angry fat molecules that actually make you fatter. They'll lower your insulin resistance, and they'll turn back to biochemistry. So it's not just a matter of losing weight to make your diabetes get better. It's you got to change the person's metabolism besides the diet and exercise, or it's a one-way yo-yo diet pathway to coming back to the problem only with new problems. Nutraceuticals we have here in Nutrimedical, because I tell people they really don't understand just how important it is to actually get the right nutrients in your body. By the time you're going to your doctor and your blood pressure's up, or your vision's going, or your skin is drying out, or your hair is breaking off, or the outside eyebrows are breaking off because you're hypothyroid, or your core body temperature is low, or you're getting fat, or all of a sudden somebody says your blood sugar is shooting up and your hemoglobin A1C is diabetic, or all of a sudden you can't feel your toes because you got peripheral neuropathy, or you get cramps in your legs at night and restless leg syndrome, your conventional doctor is completely lost. They're lost. They're untrained. You're literally going to an untrained person that doesn't have the training to diagnose what's wrong with you in terms of even the pathology before you have signs or symptoms, but the pre-pathology, which is the impaired mineral concentration in your tissue, the impaired activation of specific nutrients at their end stage you need to make healthy cells and tissues. And before you even get symptoms, so that you're able to cycle and produce melatonin at night and go to sleep and keep your nervous system calmed down and protect yourself from oxidative stress so your brain doesn't get Alzheimer's, which is oxidative stress in your brain causing S100 protein aggregates to cause astrocytes to stop firing and eventually to stop them from living altogether. So Ryan, we have nutraceutical protocols for virtually everything, don't we? And it's not just having the color palette of all the NutriMeds, because there's other doctors that have some nutritionals here and there that are pretty good at one or two niches, but you have to have the comprehensive protocols that can be adapted for each person, and you have to be able to tell people this is the functional medicine testing to actually prove that what it's doing is working. Right from the bioplasmatic testing, like the Bioplasm Expert and Pro, and my favorite, the QRMA. And by the way, out there, if you have a QRMA and you haven't sent me one, it doesn't cost you anything. Just send me a compressed file along with a history form, ideally my consult form, and I will update your protocol and tell you what you need to change, because even before you get sick and develop a new illness, whether it's cancer or autoimmune disease, your body's out of balance. The word disease should really mean, out of balance. When we talk about wellness, we're not talking about just a lack of disease, because a lot of people are walking around unwell, but they're not yet sick. And there's a big difference there, isn't there?
Yeah.
They're unwell but not sick yet.
That's right. Well, that's kind of how our healthcare system works. It's like, well, you're not sick yet, but are you really well? No, you're not. You're living in a state of disease, and eventually it'll be diagnosed to some kind of category. But a lot of people will say, they just don't feel that good. They know they're off, or it's not going well. And then conversely, when they do and can start getting themselves feeling better, they notice that difference. And it reminds me of when you would talk about, somebody taking Vitamin Mineral Max and then reporting back to you, how different they feel, yet they've taken many multiple vitamin mineral formulas, throughout their life, and yet they usually don't feel anything at all. And this doesn't have anything to do with, say, caffeine or anything that's energetic in nature. It has to do with those ingredients that really are getting where they need to go, back to that point about bioavailability. And I love the way you describe it as a cellular handshake to the body, and I think that's a wonderful way to people think about it, that each cell can get more of the nutrients than it needs to be utilized.
Yeah, and I call it, that's a good cellular handshake or a high five. Your body says, hey, you got it. And you got this smooth energy, but you're not wired. You know what I mean? You feel relaxed, but you feel competent. And that's the important thing, is people don't realize I see an entirely incompetent population that's sick. They're unwell, but a lot of them are still in the zone of compensation, where they're not decompensating into having full-blown arthritis, or their blood pressure's taken off into orbit, or their blood sugar's terrible, or they can't think straight because their brain's inflamed. I call it BOF, or brain on fire. And there's many different forms of BOF. When I have idiots like the so-called genius, Dr. Ben Carson recommends in February that everybody have mandatory vaccines. Man, you need to go back to school. You do not understand biochemistry or physiology or neuroanatomy or neurophysiology or microglia or the immune system at all, buddy. I don't care how many qualifications, how many people think you're a genius, you're not. And anybody who doesn't understand, this is, by the way, 99.999% of doctors, they get their MD or their specialty training, and whatever they do, they just kind of, like the mouse getting the cheese, they study, they regurgitate, they get their certification, and they do a whole bunch of procedures. That's not how problem solving in medicine should work. Even the American Murder Association, I call them, that had changed many years ago for the AMA, certify that 1/3 of even surgical procedures aren't necessary. So when you start saying, well, why am I hypertensive? You're hypertensive because your heart's perceiving you don't have perfusion. So if we improve your perfusion, your blood pressure will come down. But if we don't monitor your perfusion, and by the way, we're going to have the lab guys from the technology institutes here in America that developed the EndoPat and the other technologies for measuring microcirculation, because your doctor, when they measure your blood pressure, is not measuring your perfusion. And if they overtreat your blood pressure, especially if you're over 60, they'll push you into dementia or heart failure or renal failure. You've got to lower it slowly, and you've got to fix the physiology the same way as if you're going to reverse diabetes. You don't just lower the blood sugar by slapping on drugs and insulin, because high insulin itself is a toxin. And if you're not lowering glucagon and lowering insulin as well, and lowering the oxidative stress, you'll actually see people go on diabetic drugs, and all of a sudden their vision's going and their kidney function's going. They say, oh my gosh, my blood sugar's good, but now I can't see. And I get calls like this all the time and say, what happened? My doctor gave me 2 drugs, and now my vision is going. I said, well, it's because they drove up your blood insulin, which creates new free radicals and new microcirculation in the back of your eyes into the Bruch's membrane, and it's going to cause accelerated eye degeneration. And they say, you're kidding. Does my doctor know this? I said, did your doctor measure your fasting blood insulin? No, he doesn't even know about that. Did he measure your fasting blood glucagon? Did he measure your free radical oxidative markers? No. Did he do a retinal photograph or a digital scan of your eye with a Goldman field test? No. I say, well, that's the reason why you have a knucklehead doctor that's going to kill you or make you go blind. Now, when people say, Dr. Deagle, you have attitude. Yeah, I get attitude. I'm sick and tired of stupid people. Stupid people that pretend to be smart. And believe me, I don't have any intellectual attachment to any previous levels of my own stupidity, because believe me, I've had lots. I've had to shovel up the back and relearn. And anybody can teach me. But you got to challenge me to prove me wrong. And that's going to be a hard task, because we've been at this now approaching half a century. So that's going to be a really tough job for you. So Ryan, you talk to a lot of people, and you know that there's lots of functional medicine doctors out there. Most of them are what I call kindergarten level. They throw in a few nutraceuticals in their practice. You see this a lot of time with naturopaths and chiros that get into functional medicine. And they have some rudimentary levels of knowledge, but you need to get advanced in terms of testing and artful readjustment of your nutraceuticals, because your body's systems are going to change. Even when I give you a protocol now, the art and science of it's going to advance, as well as the testing technologies, and we need to adjust that. We can't just say one size fits all, because a lot of people are taking nutraceuticals, they actually make their imbalances worse rather than better. It's true, isn't it?
It's very true, and it's something that happened with my own body. And I was working on doing something that was the best for me, and what I thought it to be. But I had an issue, and this strikes home, because it's something that a lot of people need to be aware of. In this case, for me, when I would consume non-activated forms of B6, and when you look at B6, you can get it in very regular forms, but then there's activated forms of this, like the P5P, and if you don't, and people like me, what happens is I have some type of genetic SNP that then causes.
Keep that thought. We'll be right back. We want to talk about that when we come back. And welcome back. So, Ryan, let's continue. If you have a B6 polymorphism, and actually what I do now, and people should know this, I will literally take someone's genetic analysis on their 23andMe and Prometheus, and then tell them which organic acids and metabolites to measure at various labs, like Genova Metametrics, Doctor's Data, or William Shaw's lab in Overland Park, Kansas. And I can actually determine the genetic polymorphism, the nucleoplasm mineral concentrations, and the epigenetic activation of specific genes, and tell them which diseases they're prone to develop. For example, diabetes is directly linked to a B6 polymorphism. On the if you have the polymorphism, you have to have the activated form of B6, or it'll actually cause peripheral neuropathy, because it's one of the factors that in diabetics causes peripheral neuropathy. And the way it does it is it shuts off superoxide dismutase in the nerve fiber neurolemma, which is the vascular area around the nerve, and the dural nerve sleeve, and the Schwann cell sheath around peripheral nerves. And peripheral neuropathy happens because the neurolemma lacks the superoxide dismutase, and it's directly caused by having the non-activated form of B6 along with the non-activated form of B1. So you want fat soluble B1, and if you take the B1 and B6, you're diabetic. You can reverse neuropathy, but you also won't get it. So people that have B6 polymorphisms are predisposed to diabetes. And so I know the specific genes and how to reverse it and prevent it. So it's not deterministic. Genes don't make you get a disease. They permit you to have it if you have the wrong diet and lack of activated factors. Just like if you got a bunch of bad girly magazines in the restroom and your dad kind of tapes them over and says, don't read these are for me, not for you. Don't read them. So if you read the bad books, bad things are going to happen. Well, don't read from the bad genes and you're going to be a happy person. And it's that simple, isn't it, Ryan?
Yes, sir.
And you're speechless.
The solutions are there.
Yeah, in other words, we provide solutions that other people, their mind and their eyeballs are rotating in opposite directions, say, I can't believe what you just said. I say, well, do believe. And we also provide validation. We tell you what tests to do, what imaging studies, what sensory nerve tests like the Axon 2 nerve pathology test, which measures A delta and C fibers, digital thermography, for dysautonomia, which always occurs over every organ. Any organ you get an illness, there's always a dysautonomia and a thermographic change on digital thermography. Whether it's a problem in your brain or peripheral nerves or over your heart, there's no such thing as a disease that does not have a dysautonomia. And you can digital thermography, you can see it years before you actually develop pathology. Interesting, eh? So if your right knee is going to blow from rheumatoid arthritis, not your left knee, you'll see it on a digital thermogram years before it ever happens. Interesting, eh?
That's totally fascinating.
It is. It shows you the bioplasmatic body rules. It's in other words, the information of disease actually rules before pathology develops. And of course, that's where Nutrimedicals come in, because if we know what the imbalances are, we can actually fix something before it blows. It's almost like going into a real high-tech German car dealership. You got a Mercedes or a foreign car, an Audi, whatever. and they go in and they test everything. They test so much. It's like, we adjust cell strengths, we adjust this and that, we checked with x-ray all of the joints and whatever, and we fixed everything so you're just like the car roll off production line. And you go and say, oh my gosh, it drives just as good as when I got it 2 or 5 years ago. That's because that's what your body's trying to do. We're here at Nutrimedical, we're trying to roll your body off the production line. And eventually, as I said to Professor Ron Klatz, Dr. Ron Klatz, we are 5 to 20 years away, probably sooner than later actually, of literally we call zero senescent technology. We have all the little pieces coming together now. We talked about this in the last hour with Dr. Bob Dennis, of zero senescence. In other words, just like, I saw one special they were advertising on TV, and they were talking about giving somebody a cold infusion to stop them so they didn't die. Freezing them so they wouldn't die. Well, guess who developed that? Me, in 1978. I was actually doing cold infusion to people who come in with a cardiac arrest and actually dropping their core temperature to 87 degrees. And you cannot die unless you're warm and dead. And as soon as we make you cold, you can't die. Believe it or not, your cortex will not degenerate, your heart will not destroy itself, your blood vessels will not blow up, and your cells and tissues won't degenerate or release what's called the death reflex. Interesting, eh? So, it's funny they're now getting on TV, but guess what? While I was doing all this stuff, I was getting heavily persecuted for breaking paradigms that doctors don't want broken. Well, guess what? I have different attitude now and a different skill set, and I'm ready to take on all takers. Come into my cage match there, guys, because it's going to be unpleasant intellectually. And now I also have legal skill sets to go to Supreme Court. In fact, I'm actually feeling super well enough now. I'm ready to file a couple federal lawsuits over different things like switching mode power supply, smart grid, the pro-life issue, dealing with the personhood of the fetus, and the epigenetics of climate modification using scalar signaling and the nanoparticles in the upper atmosphere, which I have firsthand classified knowledge access to. So I'm going to release this in court and bring out all my experts around the world in this. So look out, Dr. Deagle's on a rage right now. In the next few years, you'll see federal lawsuits that I'm going to file on a number of different areas that are going to rock and roll. And believe me, you do not want to be on the other side of the docket seat when I do a cross-examination. It's going to get ugly. Major ugly. And there's a difference between arrogance and competency. I am not arrogant. A mother with grade 3 with a good question can prove me a fool. But someone who's arrogant and thinks they know better and can't prove it logically or with evidence, it's going to be a dark day for them. So, I want to shake out medicine so physicians of the later 20th century and 22nd centuries, they look back and say, oh my gosh, we had this maniac, this dirty Harry of functional medicine, Deagle, who had a radio show and went through a lot of persecution trying to change medicine, which is why I went into medicine to find the cause of diabetes, for my grandfather was dying of it. And when I did my research, I got persecuted. So it started to change my attitude. I started to, as I say, I started to modify my medical legal genetics. And now my attitude is particularly bad after almost half a century of this stuff. So I don't take any captives. I don't believe in prisoners intellectually. It's time to die. So Ryan, NutriMeds are pretty cool. I mean, I get so excited when I take my pills. I have a bag of them here I have to take here right after the show. And when I take these, my body says, thank you, Deagle, all the diseases you would otherwise have and your relatives do have, you're not going to have them. You're not going to go blind, turn diabetic, die of heart failure, get peripheral neuropathy. In fact, I got a bunch of genes on my tests that actually show if I take care of my health, I got the FOXO2 genes to live to be 100 years or older. So do not think that you need to develop the hollow person syndrome like the lady actress who decided to lop off her breast and take all her female organs. You know what I'm talking about.
Of course.
Yeah. And we see this. People get the back pain. Oh my gosh, I got cancer. I need to become hollow, and I will live. No. Becoming hollow doesn't mean you're going to live. It means you need to find out why those genes are turned on and make sure they don't get turned on. Or how are you going to do selective fetal abortion before the fetus even develops by doing artificial insemination and reducing the embryos before they even get implanted? I mean, this is pretty weird stuff, and it produces new genetic mutations and so on, trying to even do these procedures on these fetuses. So if you think these babies and these children are going to develop normally after screwing around with them as embryos, think again. It's probably not going to work out very good for you. Mm-hmm. So what we should be doing is, I believe, what's called genetic protofection, and down the road we will have gene protofection where we can actually fix your genes after you're born. That's coming, and I've actually worked out some ideas on how to do that as well, using scalar diagnostics and gene protofection technology. So we're going to do that. It'll happen, but it'll happen because we imagineer ourselves into a future we want that's godly, that's based on science and logic, not on foolishness. NutriMeds. As Buzz Lightyear says, onward and upward to infinity and beyond. If you want to stay healthy and well and not ever get symptoms or see pathology, take your NutriMeds. It'll make you strong, healthy, and live long and prosper, like Spock says. Back and, I guess we should be still having Ryan. I was gone for a minute there. Let's see if we can get Ryan back. I guess we have another segment left to do. And while we're doing that, I'm going to actually pop over onto some areas that I'd like to talk about in terms of specific NutriMeds and some news. One of the areas of news that people should be aware of is that we have our big sale coming up at the end of the early September, which is Labor Day weekend. That's about 3 weeks away. But we have sales all the time. And right now we have a sale on for silver. I think it's something like 20% off. 15-20% off, and free shipping. We have a sale on the QRMA, the Bioplasm Expert and Pro. We have a sale on for our ozone machines and the air filtration, plasma air filtration systems are available also. We have a sale also on the Bioplasm Clinical, the most advanced diagnostic machine in the world. My favorite is the QRMA, and I tell people if you want to get well, you want to have a QRMA machine. And I guess I was so busy there talking, I thought it was our last segment, and we actually had a segment left. What I want people to do is call in if you have questions about any wellness issues. At the top of the hour, we're going to be joined with Professor McCanny. We're going to talk about lots of other issues too. Some of the things that I'd like to kind of open up here in terms of wellness is some of our other nutraceuticals. We have, of course, Indiamese, which optimizes your mineral content, of your neurohormonal content in your brain, including your activation of your higher spiritual and centers of your brain. We have Cardiovasc, which is our new named Cardivite, Lumen Photon. And we have some new sizes available also. We have the Alamax, Alamed, and Mountain Red Velvet. Pure Water Systems, if you use the code NutriMed, you're going to save 10% on our Pure Water Systems. We have Ultra Liquid Zeolite. Our Keeler Max and Leo Liquid Zeolite are the most important things. With all the heavy metals in our environment, you should be taking it every day. We have the Carrot Bars business links, and you can see also our KP Vision. We've actually added a number of linked websites, and again, Pete Fettig is back on Tuesday and Thursday, first hour, to kind of tell people how to get their Carrot Bar business. And remember, there's going to be a lot of pushback from credit card companies and from various different districts and countries, because they're terrified that this is a major threat, much more of a threat than Bitcoin, to the current fractional reserve currency systems, credit card companies, and other economic systems. So this Carrot Bar business is going to be phenomenal. And the first step, of course, is Carrot Bar savings, where you just start saving gold and you encourage others to do so. Number 2 is going to be Carrot Bar vendors that will be taking Carrot Bar currency as payment for products and services. And number 3 is the Carrot Bar's kiosks that will actually be placed around the world, so you can actually convert to fractional reserve currency on the spot at these kiosks, convert and receive Carrot Bar gold bars, 1, 2.5, and 5 grams, or Carrot Bar currency, or fractional reserve currency in any denomination. And I think I just hit a bleep bleep sound, so I think we have a call. No sign of rhyme, and that's okay. I'm just going to continue here. We have, of course, the Vibra Slim, and of course people are picking up, are absolutely amazed. It's not only toning, but if you're trying to reverse osteoporosis, I recommend what I call the Vibra Fit program, where you get some body elastic bands and adjustable light weights. We have, of course, the Nutrimedical DVDs and documentaries. Those are available. We have lots of different ones I've produced over the years at conferences, etc. And of course, we have our phone and email wellness consults. Those are for like 1 in 1,000 that wants to have me review tons of records, literally 99.999% of the time. If you request a consult from me, or just send me information, I'll just tell you what the protocol is, what I call the core and advanced, and what technologies to use. I would really appreciate it if you'd only get your nutraceuticals from us. It supports what we do, but it also makes sure you're not going to take garbage that's not going to work for you. And if you give me a list of your meds, I'll tell you which meds are safe and which ones are useless or stupid, which things you need to take, and which ones you have to still take while you're getting your body back into balance. We have, of course, the MG12, and if you use the code, you're going to be, if you go to our direct link, you're going to save 10%. Transdermal Dead Sea Minerals, and a full array of cosmetic products, from underarm deodorant to shampoo, to the magnesium oil, etc. And the mild hyperbaric chambers. And of course, Bruce McKeeman, he's at 612-325-8243. I tell people the power of one's oxygen with ozone. We have our ozone generators now. You can adjust for 30 minutes of ozone that goes to your compressor. We have now the air filtration systems as well. Hyperbaric therapy, no matter what health condition you have, you can release a device for a few $100s a month. And if you've got a serious health problem, this is amazing, combined with our NutriMeds. And you have to take the right NutriMeds. We have, of course, the less EMF, and I'll be getting Emil de Toffel back on. He's not only a dentist, but electrical engineer and expert on all kinds of electrosmog, radiation detection, etc. The best, most advanced company in the world in the Northeast United States. And Emil will be back tomorrow with some specials, including shields to prevent your card from being scanned at a distance to steal your identity, things to protect you from ultraviolet radiation, scalar switching mode power supply radiation, etc. Barriers. I have a barrier up on one of my walls actually to prevent radiation coming back to our bedroom, which is about 75 yards away. And we have Bill from New Jersey had a quick question. Go ahead, Bill. You're on the air.
Okay, hey, Dr. Deagle, Bill here. I was re-listening to one of your shows with Dr. Hildebrand and about, the nanoparticles that kind of can get into us from the sky and everything. Is there anything to do to combat that, like magnets or anything like that?
Well, the first thing you want to do is our air filtration system. We have these new air filters. We'll pull that out of your home. I usually recommend a HEPA filter on your main furnace ducts of your home. So even during the day, you should probably be running in air, even if it's not air conditioning. And secondly, in each room or large area, you can get one of our air filtration systems that'll pull the nanoparticles out of the air. It not only charges the particles up, but then once they're charged, you have to hit them on an air filter. So you can't. The one that we had last year that was put forward by Gulf Health Next changed it into a plasma. but once you charge them, you actually have to pull them out with a filter. So we do have those filters available right now, and they're at a reasonable price, so I strongly recommend if you're trying to pull out nanoparticles. Now, in terms of detox, you want to take regularly every day Keeler Max and liquid zeolite, and then you have to replace the other minerals with topicals like MG12, and internally Vitamin Max Minerals Plus, Glycemics Ageless Life Support to get the trace minerals back in your body, and the macro minerals, because you're going to pull out the good things with the bad. Nanoparticles everywhere, and unfortunately there are a lot of pseudo-experts out there that know some of the technology, like activists like Dane Wigington, that he's on a big program to contact a lot of different radio stations, and I agree with probably 70% of what he says, but there's 30% where I provide additional classified information about the nature of the nanoparticles and who's doing it and why they're doing it and how the climate's being modified, and it's not from visible chemtrails. It's well above that. Well, people need to realize there's multiple layers to this problem, and the upper atmospheric control using space-based lasers and plasma interferometry, and the lower atmospheric level making, quote, we call making chemtrails, not contrails, are separate issues. Yes, there are probably planes that are doing it, but most likely the robotic drones are well above the visible area, and these nanoparticles being put out are not visible as a chemtrail. And they don't need to put them over your continent or your country. They can spread as a Dyson sphere around the planet. So what people need to do is they need to understand I have classified sources directly face-to-face with Dr. Isley from the World Constitution Parliament Association as a physicist and owner of Vitamin Cottage that founded the World Constitution Parliament Association and works not only with the United Nations but a multiple consortium of countries that have been modifying the world climate for the past 35 years. And I know the science in exquisite and painful detail. And I don't ask for respect, I demand it. Because if people don't know what the problem is and can identify who's doing it, they're not going to find a solution or how to protect people. Right?
Thank you very much. You're the man.
Yeah, there's a difference between arrogance. I'm not arrogant, I'm competent. There's a difference. And I've paid a big price for it, too. Believe me. When you serve the Most High God and you do the right thing, your blood, your life is joined to the blood of the Most High God, who is Emmanuel, God with us, who came here and died for us. And if you die for God and do the right thing, believe me, you will suffer in this world, but it is for righteousness. Back in a minute with Hour 3, Professor McCanny.